Good morning. Welcome back to the Forward Podcast. Hey, before we start talking about cycling, I have to talk about Roger Federer. Amazing, JB. He won his first Wimbledon in 2003. Here we are in 2017. Didn't drop a set the entire time for 2 weeks. Not one set.
That's amazing.
Amazing.
How old of a guy is he?
Well, he's 14 years. That's good. He's 14 years older than the first time he won. He's an old man. Way to go.
Yeah.
All right, let's do this. I have no headphones. I feel a little necky without my headphones.
He's 35, by the way.
35, okay. All right, let's do this. We ready?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. What was this, 189K? Yeah. All right, welcome back to the Stages Podcast. I'm your host, Lance Armstrong, my good buddy J.B. Hager, talking about the stage into Le Puy-en-Velay, which we learned today by watching the race, is the region that Bardet is from, which is pretty interesting. And you saw some pretty animated fans out there, which shouldn't be surprising that he's French and he's contending for the overall, but that you're going to his hood, it makes them even more spicy.
We are going to talk about some of the fans and their behavior today. We're going to get into that just a little bit.
But before we talk about it, I mean, hats off to Bauke Mollema from Team Segafredo. What a ride. I mean, that to obviously make it into the front group of 28 guys. Started out as 28 guys. Did I predict that?
You predicted a breakaway would stick today.
Yeah, thank you. But to send it, or to send that attack so far out from the finish, 27 kilometers from the finish, and to hold it off, and got a big gap. They brought him back. He got a little more. I mean, what a gutsy ride. Cool to see.
It's funny, you mentioned right away people talking about their hometown and their home country, and that comes up a lot, obviously for the French riders, but when it's their hometown, they just really play that up.
Sure.
I mean, I'm just thinking of the level of all these riders, and to think that someone has an advantage because it's their hometown, I don't buy that.
I buy it. I buy the fact that they know they're racing in front of their friends and family, but most importantly, they know these roads. And this was we saw a little bit of a shakeup in the GC in that Dan Martin got 10 plus seconds and moved from 6th to 5th. But other than that, there was no change in the GC. But it wasn't an easy day. You saw that peloton lined out all day long, strung out. And as we talk about this part of France, the Massif Central, is just, the roads are never straight and they're never flat. And so with that comes a lot of stress, comes a lot of difficulty. The roads roll slow. But before we get into anything else here, JB, I can't not read this email that we got.
The loving couple.
Yeah, and we normally say the names. I'm not going to say this person's name. Just you'll understand in a minute. So he goes on to say, Lance, I'm an avid cycling fan and would say that I'm a former admirer of yours. Between the podcast and the Tour de Pharmacy, you've regained my admiration, and I don't think that I'm alone, as I have a group of friends that feel the same. I appreciate your insight, your humility, and your ability to laugh at yourself in the sport. I'd never listened to a single podcast prior to hearing yours, and now I cannot wait each day to listen to your commentary. During my casual ride tomorrow, we will surely discuss not only the Tour itself. Well, during your ride today, you're going to be discussing yourself. Discussing the Tour itself, but your thoughts on the stage. Just keep up the great work. The fellow's name and where he's from. P.S.
I haven't seen a P.S. on a note since I was about 12.
P.S.
But this is really good.
P.S. My girlfriend is also an avid listener. We often have sex during your podcast, but she will sometimes suddenly stop and say, quote, "Did you hear that? Lance has an interesting point there," end quote. What? We've made it.
Who has sex to a podcast?
This dude and his woman. And I so want to say his no, but dude, I'm at a loss. It came in this morning. I was like, no, what? I had to reread it.
We should say his name.
No,
He's a hero.
Higgs is like, no.
They're going at it right now. Think about it.
I don't want to think of. No, I'm not thinking. Anyways.
Yeah, legs are in the air right now.
Wow.
Oh, Russell. Oh, Russell.
That's. We'll take that out. You're not supposed to say the name, bro.
Hey, there's a lot of Russells in the world.
That's true. That's true.
All right.
Anyways.
Big news today, watching today's stage. There's a lot of things happening that we're going to talk about, but let's start with the big stuff first. Yep. Froome with another mechanical.
Yeah.
Like you pointed out, like this is, it shouldn't be happening that often. And he seems to have a lot.
To me, he has, and I actually just got a tweet about it a minute ago. He has too many mechanicals. As we were, I was watching the Australian feed, which shout out to Robbie McEwen and the guy, I don't even know the other guy's name that he's doing it with. It's awesome. I love streaming it on this NBC Gold. But so I was driving down to the studio here and caught it out of the corner of my eye. He has another mechanical. I'm thinking, it happens too often. I mean, and if you think about this year, you think about last year, you think about it's, to me, and in my career, I got very lucky. I had, but just call it luck, and one flat tire in all those 7 years.
That's it. That's the history of your mechanicals during those 7 years.
Pretty sure. Yeah.
Wow.
Very, sometimes hit the deck, but they were just more of a tip over. But it just, it only takes one of those for you to lose the entire race, and something's, I don't know. Today was a flat, so you get flat tires, you got a quick change, and had to come back. But
if you have a series of mechanical issues, do those mechanics get their butt chewed when the rider gets off the bike, especially a GC contender? Or is it just it's just accepted as?
Well, it can either be. There's a few things it can be. It can be the equipment itself. So he could have an issue with Pinarello. He could have an issue with Shimano, or just how they all line up. I don't know who their wheel sponsor is, but it could be a technical issue just with the equipment itself. It could be the mechanic, right? The way the bike is broken down every day and rebuilt and properly tuned. I'm not saying it is, but it could be. Or it could be, some riders are harder on equipment than others. Some riders, and we've talked about his style.
That's a good point.
And ironically, I was known as a rider that was very hard on equipment, and yet, I had these great mechanics that looked over the bike every night, especially the tires, and we managed to get through those years without any major problems. So. It's a whole number of things it could be. I'm not saying that it's one of them. I don't know which one it is, but to me, there are too many technical issues, too many mechanical issues for a guy who's in the yellow jersey.
All right. Well, he managed to salvage whatever happened today, and every time you think that guy's not going to get back in it, he just sort of wobbles his way back in.
Well, he wobbles his way back in because he has a great team, and he even though the last little piece where he had to come across by himself, that too wasn't an issue because he's arguably the strongest guy in the race. But and it was, we saw, interestingly enough, that Landa stayed in that front group and they didn't send him back. I still think there is something there, and something tells me that we're going to have a rest day tomorrow, and then we have a fairly easy day, but then we get straight back into the Alps, and Landa looks so good on the climbs. He looks effortless.
Do you feel like they're hedging their bets?
I know they're hedging their bets. Yeah. But he did, at the last minute, he did drop back and bring Chris Froome back up that last little bit. But for them to just keep him there,
well,
I wouldn't.
Landa was doing some press yesterday saying, "I'm here to work for Froome." And he'd like to be on the podium as well, but he's there for Froome first.
Yeah.
I mean, he had to address it, but that doesn't mean that's what's going on.
Right.
You're just trying to calm people down. I don't know if you're that director. How do you have that conversation when Landa's looking better?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if he's looking better than Chris Froome or not, but he does look good. And if I'm Chris Froome, I don't trust him as far as I can throw him. And I'm not saying he's a bad guy, good guy, but I am saying what I said the other day. He's leaving the team, and so when that happens, you have different interests. And I tell you what, speaking of him leaving Team Sky, and I meant to bring this up the other day, and I forgot. It's one issue that he's leaving Sky, but think about it if you're Nairo Quintana. And you're the guy that's been designated as the leader of Movistar to win the Tour de France. That's been they've been grooming him to try and do that. What is he thinking? Right? I mean, they just went and hired a guy that also wants to win the Tour de France.
Right. Well,
so there's all this drama plays out when
what we've seen from Quintana, like this is going to make more sense going into next year. Or is he just still tired from? He did the Giro, right?
Right.
So he's got
he's having a bad tour, and you saw it today. I mean, a day that was hard, but there's no way if he's riding like he can that he ever gets dropped and loses time. No way. He's he needs to be thinking about going to breakaways and winning a stage.
Okay. Let's talk about the French fans for a second, because when Froome was off the back, after his mechanical, trying to reel himself back in. I mean, it was no doubt the French fans were booing him. Maybe I'm naive, but we tend to think that the French cycling fans probably are more of a sophisticated fan than doing that. Am I giving them way too much credit?
I don't know if you're giving them way too much credit, but you're giving them too much credit. It's a couple things, and I have to be sensitive when I talk about this issue. But there is, in their minds, and I'm not saying it's validated or justified. There is, in and around Team Sky, in and around Dave Brailsford, the history with Bradley Wiggins, and Chris Froome. There is not zero suspicion. They have suspicion, and again, I'm probably the last person that should bring. Right. This is delicate, and I don't want to, but I'm just saying that it is there. We know that. You have to admit that. And so it's partly that, but more importantly, and I think a bigger part of it, and if not the significant part of it, or the majority of it, is that, I mean, their homeboy is in contention to win, not only their homeboy, but actually we're going through his region today. You could have anybody in the yellow jersey. It could be an Italian. It could be a Roux. It could be a Colombian. They'd be booing him too.
Okay.
But it sucks because you can so clearly hear it and see it on TV. So the perception is, oh my God,
they hate him.
They hate him. This guy's so unpopular, and Chris Froome is not unpopular. Trust me, he's extremely popular. And when he walks around and goes around, people kiss his ass all day long. So that's not an indication of whether or not he's well loved or not, or hated or not. It's just, it sucks to see it. I lived it for a lot of years, man. It's you can try to go zen on it as much as you want, but it sucks.
There's another thing about the fans, and you don't necessarily know they're French fans, but all of us I've never been over to the tour, but even just as a casual spectator, you're amazed at the effort that people go to watch the riders come by. They are there early in the morning. We talk about how it's a party all day. There's the parade of swag all day and all that stuff. And then the riders go by for a fleeting moment, right? So that's your nugget. What's amazing to me is the guy that chooses, instead of watching those riders go by for a fleeting moment, I'm going to drop my pants and moon them.
Yep, it got him on Deadspin. Look, I'm looking at Twitter right now. It says, it's Deadspin tweets and writes an article. This is more like the Tour de Butts. So there's a picture of this guy mooning. By the way, too, he's mooning in this particular picture. He's mooning a Frenchman, Warren Barguil. But these, they get anything to get on TV, JB.
Their butt.
Anything.
Well, someone posted in the comments, someone mooning you years ago.
Yeah, of course.
It's like, I had no idea that goes on this much.
Yeah.
But it's like, I can actually watch riders go by, or I can show the cameras my butt. That just is an interesting mindset to me.
Buddy, I can't explain it. I got nothing for you.
Okay. One of the things you brought up a few days ago that would make some days more interesting was if they shared some radio coverage.
Yep.
and they haven't been doing that. And I caught it yesterday, some earlier on the Aussie feed that we've been talking about on NBC Gold. Those guys are doing a great job, by the way. But they were airing some coverage, and I was like, oh, cool, this is what Lance was talking about. And after about 5 minutes of it, I was like, I have no idea what everyone is saying.
Right. The reality, well, the reality is two things. I do think it would be interesting if we could listen to the rider, talk to the team, to the director, to his teammates, because they can all communicate, right? So all 9 guys, or however many guys you have left in the race, can talk to each other, and then you can talk to the team and vice versa. I think on some days where it's a little boring, that might be interesting. I don't know that the riders and the peloton would be too keen on having that broadcast, but for a fan, it would be cool. I don't know how technology is and how possible it is to do that. But what I will say is these radios, you see a lot of times when you're watching, you'll see, and typically they're showing Froome when he grabs the mic, and there's a button inside that jersey where you push to talk, and he gets his mouth as close to the mic as he can. The reality is the quality is so bad between the wind and other interference and
sweat
and crowd noise and just there are times. I mean, I have to say, I probably understood 25% of what was ever said out there because and then you throw in different languages, different accents, different, and after a while it's like.
And then that one teammate who's just too chatty for no reason. Does that happen?
And all this, with noise canceling technology and all that, you would think we'd be there. Mm-hmm. I bet you those radios, and I don't know the answer, but I bet you they have hardly changed since 10 years ago.
Two-way radios haven't evolved.
No.
It peaked in the 70s.
And then there's a fair amount of people in the sport that just want to ban them. They think that they make the sport too robotic, too predictable, that the riders cannot make their own tactical and strategic decisions, which is maybe true, and that the breakaway always gets caught at the same time, and the story always ends up being the same. A lot of people blame radios for that because they're just constantly getting that data, so they know exactly where they are. That may or may not be true. I just think. I don't think they're going away, and I think eventually it would be cool to be able to listen to them.
That would be interesting if you not only took out the radios, but you took out the chalkboard that you love so much. So you really didn't know how far up the road they were.
Yeah,
and if they were out of sight, out of mind, that would be an interesting dynamic, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but that will never happen. Then you'd have people on the side of the road telling you. They would start their clock.
They'd be watching TV and shouting it out.
Yeah, for sure.
You were getting frustrated today watching BMC. Why?
Frustrated? I don't think I was frustrated because I didn't really care. But to have
Tell us how you really feel.
I don't care. But
what were you witnessing? What stood out to you?
4 guys in the break, and then in the end 3 guys out at 10 right there, and to not only not win the stage, but to not even be in the second group of 4.
Yeah, that's a dream come true. To have 4 guys in a break, right? You just think that's
you have to just assume that they're going to figure that out. And look, at the end of the day, it was a hard day. It was not easy like maybe some people thought, or easier like they thought. And maybe they just didn't have the legs. That's what they're going to say when they get back in the team bus, and the director's standing there, and Jim Akowitz, the team GM, is standing there. Is like, what happened? They're just going to say, I couldn't follow. Yeah. But that was a big miss for them. That they've had an awful tour, and this was their chance with those numbers in that group that was clearly going to go away and stay away. This was their chance to get one, and they didn't.
Let's talk about the support cars, because it's pretty tricky, and maybe you can explain to the casual fan what's happening on days like today, where you have breakaways and groups, and there's certain points when a team car can go up the road and support them, and then they have to pull out. What's going on there?
So the general rule, although today we saw them budge a little on the rule, the general rule is when either a breakaway, a single person, it doesn't matter how big the group is, when they have a minute advantage, when they're a minute up on the main peloton, then their team cars are allowed to come around. And so psychologically, the peloton knows. They see that and they say, okay, even if they haven't seen the time board, they know it's a minute because the cars are allowed to come around. Which, by the way, too, can be, today you had 28 guys up there. I mean, I don't know how many teams, call it 15 teams. I mean, all of those cars trying to get around that peloton on twisty, hilly roads.
And some narrow. It seems like we're seeing more narrow roads.
Yeah, they don't hop over. They got to go through. So
right.
it makes it, that's a little sketchy.
So what happens? So when the peloton is typically taking the whole road, are they just on their horn?
Laying on the horn, and it's we talked a lot this tour about etiquette, and that's one thing where you just gotta nobody's trying to take your place. You just get over. They want those cars to get through there as quickly as possible. So the quicker they all get over, move over, let them go by, the better. But it's still it's hectic for a few minutes, and then vice versa on the other side. Once that gap gets below a minute, then that car has to pull off. Mm-hmm. So psychologically too, when you're in the break and you hear that your director comes on and says, "Okay, we have to pull over." I mean, they're coming for you.
Okay.
So it's kind of...
This is a rookie question, but who's typically in that team car?
Well, there's first of all, in the Tour de France, each team has 2 cars. So there's a car 1 and car 2. Typically, obviously in car 1 is the main director, and the back seat is the mechanic. And then at the Tour, there's so much, there's so many people want to be there that typically you'd have a sponsor or a VIP riding shotgun. And then if you have even more people, you could stick somebody in the back seat, which that's not exactly the best seat to be in because you're sitting back there with a mechanic, you can't see much. So that's who they put in there. Car 2, they can also put VIPs and sponsors. And typically car 2 stays with, car 1 always stays with the leader of the team in the mountains, for example.
So car 1 is going to have your GC spare bikes on it.
Spare bikes.
On car 1.
Absolutely.
And obviously they can't put 9 bikes on a car. So some of them are sort of neutral bikes.
I saw, a couple things. One, they can interchange the bikes if they need to. If car 2 would be the car that goes up, that comes to the peloton and goes and follows the breakaway. That's car 2. So if all of a sudden, somebody makes it into that break and his bike is on car 1, they'll just pull over and exchange the bikes and then get through the peloton, and car 2 will be the one that supports that break.
It's mind-blowing. It's just mind-blowing to watch the cars maneuvering through the crowd and through the bikes. And
no, I mean these directors. Shocking. I mean, obviously they're tactically astute, but they're like part-time rally drivers. It's crazy. I mean, people that sat in our cars with Johan Brunel. I mean, Phil Knight came to a tour one year on road to mountain stage, and the climbs are exciting because there's a lot of people, but the speed in which they drive on the downhills is fucking nuts. And these people get out of the cars like, that's the greatest day in sports I've ever experienced.
Just riding in the car, trying to keep up with a downhill.
And just the whole handing up bottles and it's
chaos.
Chaos.
It's absolute chaos.
Yeah.
I know. I've seen shots of Johan back in the day, and he's driving. He's on the radio. He's watching television. I mean, they're watching TV coverage in the car as well.
Yeah. Probably not supposed to, but they do.
Hanging out the side, fixing bikes. It's mind blowing. All right, so we're going into a rest day, and now you've said before you didn't even like the rest day. You'd rather get out and hammer it again. Does the second rest?
I got some grief for that, for saying it. Yeah, I'd rather not have the rest days. Yeah, of course.
You're
all geared up,
right?
I was like, come on. This one's a little different than the first one. We should go through this just for a second. But there's no transfer. There's no flight. They have the whole day. They got the whole day to do what they want to do.
Sightseeing.
Yeah, that's right. Go down to the water park with their kids, probably. No, they have the day to get massage, eat, ride a bit, whatever therapy they need to do.
When you say ride a bit, what's typical? I know you said you would make your teammates work a little harder than most.
Everybody's different.
A couple hours of just spinning your legs out?
I think it depends a little bit. It doesn't depend a little bit. It depends a lot, actually, on what the stage is the day after the rest day. Back in the day, it was almost always the day after the rest day was a hard mountain day. If that's the case, you have to go out and hammer on your rest day. I hate to say it, and I hated to do it to the guys, but we did. This particular rest day, the next day is not an easy day per se, but it's not a mountain day. It's listed and categorized as a quote unquote sprint finish. So they know that day will get them back into their rhythm. Like none of these GC guys are going to lose the Tour de France the day after that rest day. So it just depends. It depends. And the other interesting thing, which we just saw, is that like rest day number 1, Chris Froome didn't do a press conference, and he's not going to do one on rest day number 2. And I'm sure the press room is livid. But I got to say, I completely agree with that. It's just chill. Press conferences are never chill, and so just chill, bro.
A couple things before we get to the comments. We're going to talk about tomorrow.
We've already read the greatest comment of all time.
That's
I
true.
don't even know how we can read another comment on the air.
We've got some good stuff. We'll hold off on the comments. Let's talk about not tomorrow, obviously rest day. The next day they come back.
Yep.
What to look for?
I said it a few days ago that I think Marcel Kittel is going to win 8 stages in the Tour. He would have to win this stage to get 8. He could get 7. That's still great. Winning 8 stages ties the all-time record that Eddie Merckx did twice and Freddie Martins did once. He's thinking about that. But more importantly, I tell you what he's thinking about. He's thinking about Michael Matthews, because this green jersey competition could heat up. I mean, Kittle's got a good lead. Matthews got points today. And so, he has to. The reality is that the day after tomorrow is also not an easy day. We're still on the Massif Central. We're still on those twisty, turny, up and down roads. The race basically starts uphill. I mean, if you look at the profile, the first 20 kilometers or 12 miles is uphill. So he's got to get through that, and then it kind of rolls around on the plateau, and then it goes down, and the last part of the race is basically flat. So the question is, how much is he worried about the green jersey points? How much is he worried about or thinking about the tying the record? And then finally, and most importantly, how much is the first part of that stage going to take the quickness out of his legs? My sense is he's going to be, even though he's so much faster than anybody else, he's going to be wasted when he gets to the finish, just because the first part of the stage is going to be hard for him.
Well, as we get farther into the Tour, you see more of the opportunists who need the stage win.
Yep.
And you talk about it being hilly early on. It's the sprinters team's job to keep them in the hunt,
Yep.
right?
And
to control the pace of everything.
Right. And, I'm sure that Quick Step and Marcel Kittel didn't like to see Michael Matthews in the breakaway today, but he did. A break could still go away and succeed, and that would be, if you have a big group like that, they take all the points. They take the intermediate points, they take the finish line points, and therefore they don't lose any points. So they'll be paying attention to exactly who is in the break. And if it's Michael Matthews, they can't let that go again.
So you're not likely to see anybody get away.
Now that I hear myself talk about it, again, it's just maybe he doesn't care about trying to win 8 and tying a record. I think that'd be pretty awesome, to see somebody win 8 stages in one tour. But that may not be nearly as important as winning the green jersey in Paris. And if that's the case, if all you care about is the green, then you just let 28 guys go again. Which I'm telling you, on this terrain, it is so easy to get away. I heard they were interviewing Bauke and Mollema after the stage, and we haven't talked about this, but when that group on these narrow roads, when that break gets away, Team Sky, Chris Froome, all the GC, they want that break to succeed. They want them gone. It makes the stress level on the peloton drop significantly. And so one way you can do that on a narrow road is to block the road. And he talked about it today in his post-race interview, because he was one of the riders that was stuck behind a wall of Team Sky up front. That
as an amateur racer, this is what I was really good at.
Yeah, blocking the road, just laying down.
If I had a teammate up front, this was my specialty.
Yeah,
I was a road blocker.
Right. So but if you're trying to get in that group and the group is going away and they're blocking the road, when I say blocking, I don't mean obviously we're not stopping.
No.
But if you line up 9 riders or 10 riders across the road, it's very, you can't get through. Mm-hmm. And so they'll be on the side in the gravel, or, in the grass, just anything to get around so they can try to get up into that break.
Is there a a lot of screaming from the back when it's being blocked? I know there is an amateur race.
No, they're just trying to get through.
Yeah.
They're just trying. I mean, they could pull the skeezy move of saying service, but
We learned that the other day.
we learned that the other day.
I love that. All right, you want to take some, get some comments, some questions here? I know we got to get you out of here today. It's a
That's right. We too are. Well, these guys aren't transferring. We are transferring.
It's a transfer day.
We're leaving Austin because it's Africa hot here. Thank God I'm leaving. And going back to Colorado.
Yeah, let's tackle this quickly so we can do our transfer.
Maggie Matt.
Yeah. Amy White writes, the Aussie feed had race radio on today too. Do you think they're listening to our podcast? I'd be flattered if they were listening to this podcast.
Who knows? I'm getting a lot of messages from guys that are in the press corps, and it's cool to hear from them. So I know some of those guys are listening. I don't know, which of the TV people are listening, but it would be fair. Obviously, we're watching and listening to them. Well, I'm listening. I listen to almost everybody except for one person.
Dan writes, thanks for being candid on your worst and best memory from your tours. That was on yesterday's podcast, stage 14, if you want to hear that. It was really good. It's at the end. I've been getting a lot of good comments from this guy, Matt Gilchrist. One might wonder if the tour might ever include a Coors Classic style criterium or a circuit race. That's not likely to ever happen.
The closest they'll ever get to that is the final day in Paris.
Okay.
I mean, the laps around the Champs-Elysees, obviously you don't start in Paris, but you start, let's say you have, that stage has been getting shorter and shorter, which the guys love. But they probably ride for 2 or 3 hours to get to the city, and then you spend an hour and a half doing basically a circuit race around the middle of Paris.
Do the Euros like crits like we do here?
No,
it's not near. It's like NASCAR, right? They like their road race.
Yeah.
Is it kind of similar in a way?
It's just it's a different sport. It really is, and when criteriums are typically a little more dangerous. There is more crashes. So no, they don't.
Doesn't the tour winner team, some of the big faces of it, won't they do some exhibition, Chris? Don't they get some...
Right. But that's like I told you the other day, that's like WWE. So they're not racing for anything. They're just
putting on a show.
Right.
Okay. Someone asked, Johnny, how long will the Stages podcast be available to watch after the tour is over? I'll help you out with that.
Yeah, because I have no idea.
Well, one, they will stay in your Facebook feed for a while, but they're being saved on the We Do YouTube channel.
Oh, they are. Cool.
So all the Facebook feeds, if that's what you're watching, you can always catch it on there. And of course, they'll stay in podcast world for a while. I think they go up to 300, and then they start kicking out.
We have a week to go, dude. I'm gonna have withdrawals. It's gonna be 49 weeks of just missing this, but I get my life back, which would be kind of nice.
Right?
Get to go ride my bike in the morning. Have I put on weight? Facebook? Do I look fatter? I feel fatter. I feel like I put on weight because
since this started.
Because of this.
Because of throwing your routine off.
Yeah. I'm not complaining, but I'm kind of complaining.
Hill Hogan writes, "Let's start a
Hulk Hogan?
Hill Hogan.
Oh,
Hill Hogan. Let's start a GoFundMe to get Lance a new pair of readers."
What are you talking about? What's wrong with these? I've said every day this week I'm going to go buy new readers. And in fact, Higgs pointed out a good point because I'm leaving here and going to the airport, and apparently the newsstands there have readers. So I might tomorrow, guys. You don't even need to waste your time on the GoFundMe. I got this.
Okay.
I'm going to get some new ones.
Victor writes in, "Best show ever. Hello from Sweden." I just like hearing all the people.
Victor from Sweden.
Yeah.
Okay. So I love this artist, this musician, Jose Gonzalez, and he's Swedish. How are you Swedish? I mean, I know how because there's some backstory there, and his parents are immigrated, blah, blah, blah. But he's a Swede named Jose Gonzalez.
That's a good way
that
to
shit
stand
just
out.
freaks me out.
Tim O'Shaughnessy writes, "Lance, what is your recipe for the Lancerita?"
Can I say something real quick? I just got a DM from Scott Mercier, my buddy, and he says, "Yes, you're definitely fatter." This is
You asked You put it out there.
Merce, that ain't cool, bro. When I get back tonight, how about you come over? We'll both take off our shirts and we'll walk around. We'll see how we do.
By the way, what is your weight now compared to?
I don't want to talk about it. I'm not talking about it.
People want to know.
There was
You're in good shape.
really sweet question you just asked. I'm not talking about it.
Your fighting weight was what? 165.
165. So I'm about 180 now.
180.
Well, I was 2 weeks ago.
You haven't checked.
I might have been a little less.
When will the Suffer tees be available? People are loving that. And a lot of people are asking about We Do kits.
When are they going to be
I bet
ready?
there were 50 messages about
Tuesday.
We Do
Higgs
kits.
says that we get restock on Tuesday. So we'll talk about that, I guess,
we'll do that
Tuesday.
Okay.
Today's Sunday, right? Yeah, I know it's Sunday because I got the Sunday New York Times. By the way, for those who get the New York Times or read the New York Times, the cover story on the sports section today was about a basketball player who's sadly enough passed away. Jackson, what's his last name? Higgs? Jackson Vroman. I mean, it's a sad story. I'll just warn you, but powerful story. Check it out if you haven't run out to your curb and got the New York Times. Probably read it online too, but awful story.
Nicholas writes, Colombian here. Kind of love that you called Colombian cyclists artists.
Yeah, they're artists. I just get another DM. Which commentator is the one you won't listen to? This is from Tanja.
Oh, that obviously just came in.
Yeah. I'm not talking about it.
Yeah.
I can't even talk about it.
If you've been listening, just go back through some
you'll-
previous podcasts and you will quickly pick up
Okay.
on what he's talking about.
Are you going to make me miss my flight?
I don't know what time your flight is. I don't know. All right, one more. Last one.
Last one.
From Gear Mashers. We met that guy the other day. What technology exists now that you wish you had when you were racing?
Huh.
And on that note, this might steer you in the right direction. What do you think about electronic shifters?
Yep. Well, we've talked about disc brakes, and I mean I've been very outspoken and a big proponent of disc brakes, and I think that this Peloton in short time will be totally converted to disc brakes. I think they're much safer. It's in the best interest of the industry. I would love to have raced. I hated, and I've mentioned this on this podcast, I hated descending in the rain, racing in the, I got super sketched out when I had to do that. And disc brakes takes a lot of that out because at least you can rely, with the braking that we raced with and probably the braking they still race with. It's like a time release, or it's a delayed reaction. So when you carbon rims, cork pads, you hit the brakes, you kind of have to think, I think I need to brake in about 5 seconds, so I'm going to start now. Like that's just, disc brakes takes all of that out.
Okay, that's the one thing.
And electronic shifting is great. I also don't mind manual shifting. Obviously the whole world is shifting over to not just on the road side, but on the mountain bike side to electronic shifting. It's again, it's another thing that's allowed the industry to go resell people. Mm-hmm. So when a fan watches the tour and they see everybody has electronic shifting and they go outside and their bike is manual, they go, oh gosh, I guess I better upgrade. And so they go down. So it allows the Shimanos and the SRAMs and the Campis of the world to go sell a whole new Grupo to a whole new population. And the same would happen with disc brakes.
Cool. If you want to get some merch, it's going to be restocked and you're going to want to pounce on that, especially the unexpectedly popular Suffer shirts.
I think we're going to do another color in the Suffer.
Okay. WeDoShop.com for that info. If you want to get notified when the shop's replenished, which is happening in the next day or so, go to WeDoSport.com and sign up for the email list. It's WEDU Sport. Your questions and comments. Thanks again to our boy earlier who's been getting some loving.
Higgs just walked over with the computer. We just got
oh boy.
I guess, and I don't know anything about Facebook, but I get, the comments come up. But an old teammate of mine, Thomas Vaitkis from Lithuania, writes in and says, you're safe. You can hang with me now. It's totally safe. I'm over 90 kilos, which is 190 pounds. But he was always a big boy. But thanks for tuning in, Vaitkis. And remember that time that I was drinking a glass of red wine at the dinner table, and you thought it was going to be so funny to replace the red wine with vinegar? Man, that shit wasn't funny. I was pissed. Nobody on that team ever saw me that pissed. I said, don't touch my wine. But it's all good now.
Is there a bit of punking and pranks that goes on among teammates?
Not with me.
Not with you. Don't just drop it. Share this with your friends. Send them to stagespodcast.com. And if you don't mind, Lance, shout out to my daughter who's in the finals today.
She is?
She's in Seattle. So they put 3. It's one of the events where they just put the top 3 through. So wishing her
my
luck.
wake surfing coach is in the finals.
She's in the finals today.
Atta girl,
in Seattle,
Raleigh.
so wishing her luck.
All right, go get it.
All right, transfer day. We'll see you.